Listen close now, because what I'm about to tell you happened when the world was harder, when choices cost more, and when a woman's courage could shake the very mountains themselves. This is the story of Grace Blackwell, who walked away from God's house to find him in the wilderness, who traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger and found only a grave, and who decided that grave would not be the end of her story, but the beginning. It was December of 1968 when my grandmother lay dying in that Denver hospital bed, her body finally surrendering to the cancer that had been eating at her for months. I was 19 years old, fresh out of high school, and the draft notice for Vietnam sat heavy in my jacket pocket like a stone. I didn't want to go. I was afraid, and I needed her to tell me it was okay to be afraid. She looked so small in that bed, this woman, who had loomed large as the Rockies themselves in every story I'd ever heard about her. 86 years old, skin like weathered leather, hands still strong, despite the disease, eyes still sharp as broken glass catching sunlight. Those eyes had seen things I couldn't imagine. Those hands had done things that would have broken lesser souls. I pulled my chair close. "Grandma, I don't know if I'm strong enough for what's coming." Her voice came out rough, like wind through pine branches. "You want to know about strength? Daniel, real strength, not the kind they'll teach you in boot camp. Let me tell you a story. Not about winning, about the price you pay when you choose the hard road instead of the easy one." She closed her eyes, and when she spoke again, her voice changed. Younger, stronger, like she was 24 years old again, standing at the edge of the world with nothing but faith and fear to guide her. "It was March of 1886, she said, and I was Sister Grace kneeling in the chapel of Our Lady of Mercy Convent in Boston, trying to pray and finding nothing but silence. The cold stone floor bit through my knees like teeth, but I didn't move. Couldn't move. The other sisters surrounded me in the pre-dawn darkness, their voices rising in morning prayer, but I couldn't make my lips form the words. 6 years I'd been here. 6 years since my parents died of typhoid fever, and I fled into these walls like a wounded animal seeking shelter. 6 years of prayer and silence, and the slow death of everything I might have been. Mother Superior's voice cut through the Latin like a knife. "Sister Grace, you seem distracted." I forced my eyes up to the crucifix above the altar. Christ hanging there in eternal agony, and I thought for the thousandth time that at least he had purpose in his suffering. "What purpose did mine serve? Forgive me, Mother," I whispered. But I wasn't sorry, and God, if he was listening, knew it. The truth was simple and terrible. I did not belong here. I had never belonged here. I had run to this place not because I heard God's call, but because I heard nothing at all in the world outside these walls, and the silence of the convent seemed preferable to the silence of an empty life. I was wrong. Later that morning, I worked in the infirmary, the one place in the convent where I felt something close to useful. My hands knew how to clean wounds, how to set broken bones, how to stitch flesh back together with needle and gut string while the patient screamed. The other sisters found the work distasteful, but I found it honest. Blood and pain didn't lie. They didn't pretend to be something they weren't. Old Sister Margaret lay in the bed nearest the window, dying slowly of consumption. I changed her bedding, wiped the blood from her lips, held the cup of water to her mouth while she drank in small, desperate sips. "You have good hands, child," she whispered. "Gentle but sure. You'd have made a fine nurse in the world outside." "I'm where God wants me," I said, the lie tasting like ash. She looked at me with those sunken eyes, seeing too much. Or are you where fear wants you?" I didn't answer. There was no answer that wouldn't damn me. That afternoon, Mother Superior summoned me to her office. She sat behind her massive oak desk like a judge behind a bench, and her face carried that expression of patient disappointment I knew so well. "Sister Grace, in 3 days you will take your final vows, your eternal vows. You will pledge yourself to God, forever renouncing the world and all its temptations. Tell me truthfully, are you ready?" I opened my mouth. The word yes should have come out automatic as breathing. Instead, nothing. Mother Superior's face softened just slightly. "Child, if you have doubts, now is the time to speak them." "I don't know if I have a calling," I heard myself say. "I don't know if I ever did." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. "Why did you come here, Grace?" "My parents died. I had nowhere else to go." And in 6 years have you found purpose here? I thought of the infirmary, of Sister Margaret's grateful eyes, of the small satisfactions of work well done. Some, but not enough. Not enough, she repeated. And what would be enough? I don't know. Something more. Something that feels like living instead of just existing. Mother Superior rose and walked to the window overlooking the courtyard. Snow was falling soft and relentless. I cannot keep you here against your will, Grace. But I caution you, the world outside these walls is cruel, especially to women alone. Here you have safety, purpose, community. Out there you will have nothing. I already have nothing, I said quietly. At least out there I could try to find something. She turned to look at me, and something in her face cracked open just for a moment. I was your age once. A young man wanted to marry me. A farmer in Ohio. Good man, strong faith. I chose the convent instead because I was afraid. Afraid of childbirth, afraid of hard work, afraid of being ordinary. Do you know what I learned? What? Fear makes a poor foundation for a life. Whether you stay or go, let it be from courage, not cowardice. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed in my narrow cell and stared at the ceiling and wondered what courage looked like. Staying seemed hard. Leaving seemed harder. Maybe they were both forms of cowardice, just pointing in different directions. At midnight, I rose and went to Mother Superior's office to clean, as was my duty, twice a week. She was gone, the room empty and cold. I swept the floors, dusted the shelves, and that's when I saw it. A newspaper 3 days old sitting in the wastebasket. Mother Superior must have been reading it and thrown it away. I shouldn't have looked. Good sisters didn't concern themselves with worldly news. But my hands were already unfolding it, my eyes already scanning the columns of text. And then I saw the advertisement that would change everything. Seeking wife. Ezra Thornwood, trapper and homesteader in the Colorado Rockies, seeks educated woman of faith to share wilderness life. Must be capable of hard labor, extended solitude, in 6-month winters at high elevation. Beauty not required. Backbone essential. Write to Ezra Thornwood, General Delivery, Columbine Creek, Colorado Territory. I read it 3 times. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. A stranger in the mountains looking for a partner. Not a servant, not a decoration, a partner. Someone with backbone. I thought of Sister Margaret saying I had good hands. I thought of Mother Superior saying fear makes a poor foundation. I thought of 6 years of prayers that went unanswered, or maybe were answered with silence, because I was asking the wrong questions in the wrong place. Before I could stop myself, I tore the advertisement from the paper and tucked it into my sleeve. That night, I wrote my first letter by candlelight, my hands shaking so badly I could barely form the words. Mr. Thornwood, I began. I am Sister Grace, currently residing in a Boston convent, but I am questioning my calling. Your advertisement speaks of partnership in wilderness of hard work and true purpose. I have education, I have medical training, I have strong hands and a stronger will, but I also have doubts. Would you accept a woman who is searching for purpose rather than running from her past? Would you accept someone who wants to build a life rather than merely endure one? I sealed the letter before I could change my mind. The next morning I gave it to the baker who delivered bread to the convent along with 3 precious pennies and asked him to post it for me. 3 weeks later he brought me a response. I waited until night until I was alone in my cell before I opened it. Sister Grace, the letter began. I don't need someone running from their past. I need someone running toward their future. The life here is brutal. Winters that last half the year, grizzly bears, wolves. Isolation that drives some folks mad. But it's honest. The mountain doesn't care about your doubts or your fears. It only cares if you're strong enough to survive it. If you're asking whether I'd accept a woman searching for purpose, my answer is yes. Purpose isn't something you find by sitting still. It's something you build with your own 2 hands. Come build it with me. Ezra Thornwood. I read that letter so many times I memorized every word. And then I wrote back. Thus began 8 months of letters that flew back and forth between Boston and Colorado, like birds carrying pieces of 2 souls across an impossible distance. With each letter, I learned more about this stranger I was beginning to care for. Ezra Thornwood was 36 years old, 12 years my senior. He'd been orphaned at 12, raised by an uncle who beat him regularly and run away at 14 to make his own way in the world. He'd worked as a miner, a logger, a ranch hand, learning hard lessons about trust and survival. At 22, he'd walked into the Colorado Rockies with nothing but a rifle and a determination to live on his own terms, and he'd been there ever since. He'd built Thornwood Station with his own hands. 640 acres of wilderness at 9,200 feet elevation, where Crystal Creek cut through a hidden valley surrounded by peaks so tall they scraped the sky. He ran trap lines that stretched 25 miles through bear country, checking steel traps every 3 days, harvesting beaver and marten and fox. He lived alone in a log cabin he'd built log by log through summers of backbreaking labor and winters of crushing solitude. "I'm not lonely," he wrote in his fifth letter. "Loneliness is wanting company you can't have. I'm alone, which is different. But I'm tired of being alone. I want to share this life with someone who understands that partnership isn't about ownership. It's about two people building something together that neither could build alone. I think you understand that. Your letters tell me you do." I told him about my life in return, about my parents' quiet shopkeepers who died when I was 18 and left me with nothing but grief and an education they'd scrimped to provide, about the convent which had seemed like sanctuary and become a cage, about working in the infirmary, the only place where my hands felt useful and my mind felt engaged. "I can read Latin," I wrote. "I know the scientific names of plants and their medicinal properties. I can set broken bones and stitch wounds and deliver babies. I can do mathematics and keep ledgers. But what I want more than anything is to build something that lasts, something that matters, not just prayers that disappear into silence, but something real." His response came fast. "Grace, those skills will save your life out here. Maybe save mine, too. A woman who can stitch wounds and deliver babies in the wilderness is worth more than gold. And yes, we'll build something that lasts. I promise you that." In his 15th letter, 8 months after our correspondence began, he proposed. "Grace, I've been alone for 14 years. I've had women in my bed and forgotten their names by morning. I've had friends who'd share a bottle, but not a burden. But in your letters, I've found something I didn't know I was searching for. Someone who sees the world the way I do, who understands that hardship isn't something to avoid, but something to meet head on, who wants partnership, not rescue. I'm not a pretty man. My hands are scarred from traps and knives. My shoulder has claw marks from a grizzly that nearly killed me 2 years back. I live in a place where you can die 100 different ways if you're not careful. But I'm honest, and I'll respect your mind as much as your hands. I'll never raise my voice or my fist to you. I'll never expect you to be less than what you are. Come west, marry me, build this life with me. If you're afraid, that's fine. Fear is just information. It tells you what matters. But don't let it stop you. Choose courage instead. Choose us. I'm enclosing a ring, nothing fancy, just gold, pure and simple. If you put it on, you're saying yes, and Grace, I hope you say yes, Ezra." The ring was in the envelope, wrapped in a scrap of cloth, small, plain, perfect. I slipped it on my finger and felt something shift in my chest like a door opening after being locked for years. I wrote back immediately. "Yes, Ezra, yes to all of it. I'll leave as soon as I can arrange passage. I'll be there by December. Wait for me." 2 days before I was scheduled to take my final vows, Mother Superior came to my cell at midnight. I was awake sitting on my bed. Ezra's letters spread around me like fallen leaves. She stood in the doorway silent as stone. Then she said, "You think I don't know?" My heart stopped. "Mother, I've been reading your letters, Grace. Everyone." Shame and anger flooded through me in equal measure. "You had no right." "I've had every right. You are under my care, under my authority, and I will not apologize for trying to protect you from making a terrible mistake." I stood up, fists clenched. "And what mistake is that, choosing to live? Choosing to throw your life away on a stranger in the wilderness? My life is already thrown away here. At least out there, it will be mine." She stepped into the cell and closed the door behind her. Her face was different now, softer, sadder. "I could stop you," she said quietly. "I could lock you in this room until after your vows. I could write to this Ezra Thornwood and tell him you have changed your mind. I could protect you from yourself. Then why don't you?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded letter, yellowed with age. "Because 42 years ago I received a letter was like the ones you have been writing. From a farmer in Ohio. A good man who wanted to marry me and raise children and build a simple life. I was 26 years old, your age. She handed me the letter. I opened it carefully, the paper brittle with age. The handwriting was masculine, steady kind. I chose the convent instead, Mother Superior continued. I told myself it was because God called me, but the truth was simpler and uglier. I was afraid of childbirth, afraid of poverty, afraid of being ordinary. So I ran to these walls and I've lived here ever since, and not a day has passed that I haven't wondered what my life would have been if I'd chosen differently. I don't understand. Are you telling me to go or to stay? I'm telling you to choose, really choose from courage, not fear. If you stay, stay because this is truly where you belong, not because you're afraid of what lies beyond these walls. If you go, go knowing the risk, accepting it, ready to face whatever comes. But don't choose from fear. That's all I ask. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out a small leather purse. She pressed it into my hands. $60, my personal savings, enough to get you to Colorado with a little left over. I stared at the money, then at her. Why? Because I failed myself 42 years ago. I won't fail you too. She pulled something else from her pocket. Her rosary, the one she'd worn every day for as long as I'd known her. Take this, not because I expect you to pray it, but because faith can find you anywhere, even in the wilderness, especially there. I took the rosary, my throat too tight for words. There's a train leaving for Chicago at dawn, she said. If you're going to go, go now, before you lose your nerve. I packed my single small trunk in darkness. One plain dress, one winter coat, undergarments, the medical supplies I'd stolen from the infirmary over the past weeks tucked carefully between layers of clothing, Ezra's letters tied with string, the ring on my finger, the rosary in my pocket, Mother Superior's $60 tucked into my bodice. At 4 in the morning, I walked out of Our Lady of Mercy Convent. I didn't look back. If I'd looked back, I might have stayed, and staying would have killed me as surely as any bullet. The journey west took 6 weeks. Train from Boston to Chicago, Chicago to Cheyenne, Cheyenne to Denver, Denver north to Leadville, the mining town that had sprung up like a fever dream in the mountains. And from Leadville, a freight wagon headed toward the smaller settlements deeper in the high country. I watched the landscape change outside the train windows. Buildings gave way to farmland, gave way to prairie, gave way to mountains. With every mile, I felt something in my chest loosening, like I'd been holding my breath for 6 years and was finally remembering how to exhale. On the wagon from Leadville to Columbine Creek, the driver was a weathered man named Thomas, who'd seen 60 winters and looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as the peaks around us. You sure about this, miss? He asked on the second day when we were climbing through aspens turning gold in the early winter sun. Columbine Creek ain't Boston. It's rough country, rougher people. I'm sure, I said, meeting someone there. My fiancé, Ezra Thornwood. Something changed in Thomas's face. You're the one. He mentioned you were coming. Good man Ezra, solid as they come. You know him, or him. Everyone knows everyone up here. Can't afford not to. Ezra's been running trap lines out of Thornwood Station for better than a decade. Keeps to himself mostly, but when he comes to town, folks respect him. He's fair and he's honest, and he doesn't start trouble he can't finish. I felt a flush of pride, which was absurd since I'd never even met the man. But he was mine in a way. My choice. My future. Thomas glanced at me sideways. You know what you're getting into, Miss Thornwood Station's 2 days hard ride into the high country? 9,000 feet if it's an inch. Winters last 6 months. Snow deep enough to bury a horse. Grizzlies, wolves, mountain lions. And that's before you account for the human threats. What human threats? He was quiet for a moment. There's been trouble with trappers getting robbed. Some killed. Gang led by a man named Kane Bridger. Mean as a rattlesnake and twice as deadly. They hit trap lines, steal the furs, kill anyone who fights back. Ezra's been lucky so far, but luck runs out. A cold finger traced down my spine. Has anyone tried to stop them? Sheriff does what he can, but the territory's too big and Bridger's too smart. Moves fast, covers his tracks. By the time law arrives, he's gone like smoke. We crested a ridge and Thomas pointed. There, Columbine Creek. The settlement lay in a narrow valley, maybe 200 souls if you counted generously. A main street with a general store, a saloon, a hotel that looked half-finished, a small church with a crooked steeple, smoke rising from chimneys. Horses tied to rails, men in rough clothes moving with purpose through the cold. It was nothing like Boston. It was exactly what I needed. Thomas pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store. Ezra said he'd meet you here. Should be along any minute. I climbed down, my legs stiff from 2 days of riding. I brushed dust from my dress and looked around, searching for a man who matched the description from Ezra's letters. Tall, dark hair, scar on his left shoulder from the grizzly. But there was no one. The street was busy with afternoon commerce, but no one approached. No one looked at me with recognition. Then I saw him. A man in a sheriff's badge walking toward me with a face like weathered granite and eyes that carried something I recognized immediately. Pity. My stomach dropped. "You'll be Miss Blackwell," the sheriff said, removing his hat. "I'm Sheriff Gideon Marsh. I've been waiting for you." "Where is Ezra Thornwood?" His face told me the answer before his words did. "Come inside, miss, out of the cold." "Tell me now." He sighed, the sound of a man who delivered bad news too many times and never found it easier. "Ezra Thornwood was killed 6 days ago." "I'm sorry, Miss Blackwell. I'm truly sorry." The world tilted sideways. I reached out and grabbed the wagon wheels to keep from falling. "How?" The word came out as a whisper. "Ambush. Widow's Pass, 15 miles east of here. Ezra and 2 other trappers were heading to market with their furs. Someone shot them from above. All 3 dead before they could reach their rifles." "Who?" "We suspect Kane Bridger's gang, but we can't prove it. Bodies were found by a cavalry patrol 2 days later. We buried them yesterday at Boot Hill Cemetery." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I'd traveled 2,000 miles to marry this man, and he was already in the ground. Sheriff Marsh's voice came from very far away. "There's a stage back to Denver in 4 days. I'll pay your fare if you need it." I looked at him. "I want to see Thornwood Station." "Miss Blackwell, that's 2 hard days' ride into the high country. No place for a lady alone. Better you head back to—" "I want to see it," I said again, harder this time. "Ezra built it for me, for us. I want to see what he made." The sheriff studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, I'll take you tomorrow at first light, but you need to understand something. Thornwood Station is isolated. Nearest neighbor 10 miles. Winter's coming on fast. And with Bridger's gang still out there—" He trailed off meaningfully. "Tomorrow," I said. "Dawn." That evening I walked alone to Boot Hill Cemetery. The sun was setting behind the peaks, turning the snow on their summits blood red. The graveyard sat on a hill overlooking the settlement, wooden markers leaning at angles like broken teeth. 3 fresh graves, 3 wooden crosses. I read the names carved into the wood. Ezra Thornwood, 1850 to 1886. Marcel Renard, 1848 to 1886. Thomas Keene, 1852 to 1886. I knelt in the dirt beside Ezra's grave. No tears came, just a terrible hollow feeling, like something had been carved out of my chest. I pulled his letters from my pocket and read the last one again by the failing light. "Grace, by the time you read this, we'll be together. I've waited 36 years to find someone who understands that partnership isn't ownership, that strength isn't gentleness's opposite. Come build our legacy." "I came," I whispered to the dirt. "I'm here." A voice behind me made me jump. "He talked about you every night by the fire, ma'am." I turned. A young man stood there, maybe 17, skinny as a rail with freckles and red hair and eyes that had seen more than their years should hold. He held his hat in his hands like a shield. "I'm Robin Hayes," he said. "Was Mr. Thornwood's apprentice. He was teaching me everything. Trapping, tracking, surviving winter. He was—" The boy's voice broke. "He was like a father to me." "How did it happen?" "Tell me everything." Robin sat down on the ground beside me, not caring about the dirt. "We were headed to Leadville. Ezra, Mr. Renard, Mr. Keene, and me, taking the winter furs to market. We came through Widow's Pass because it's fastest. Narrow canyons, steep walls. Ezra said he didn't like it, said it felt wrong, but the weather was turning and we needed to move fast." He swallowed hard. "They were waiting on the rim, 4, maybe 5 men, opened fire all at once. Mr. Renard went down first. Then Mr. Keene. Ezra pushed me behind a rock, told me to stay down. He tried to return fire, but they had the high ground. I saw him get hit. Chest shot. He went down hard. And you played dead until they were gone. They took the furs, the horses, everything of value to them, left the bodies for the buzzards. I hiked back here and got the sheriff. But by the time we returned with help, it was too late. 2 days they'd been lying there. I closed my eyes against the image. Did Ezra suffer? Robin shook his head quickly. No, ma'am. Shot through the heart. He was gone before he hit the ground. Small mercy, but a mercy nonetheless. Robin reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. Found this in Ezra's pocket when we buried him. I think he meant to give it to you. I opened the pouch. Inside was the wedding ring I'd sent back to him months ago, asking him to keep it safe until I arrived. And beneath it, a note in his careful handwriting. Grace, if you're reading this before I gave it to you, I'm dead. Don't mourn me long. I lived exactly the life I chose. But you must choose your own life now. Don't let my death trap you again. The cabin is yours if you want it. The land is yours if you file claim, but only take it if you want this life, not out of obligation, not out of grief, only if you want to build something here. The choice is yours. It always was. Ezra, I read the note 3 times, then I closed my fingers round the ring and stood up. Robin, I said, will you show me Ezra's maps tomorrow? The trap lines, the territory, all of it. He looked surprised. You're staying. I'm considering it. Ma'am, begging your pardon, but this life will kill you. It almost killed me, and I've been learning it since I was 12. A woman alone, no experience, winter coming. He shook his head. You should take the stage back to Denver. Maybe, I said, but first I'm going to see what Ezra built. Then I'll decide. The morning after Sheriff Marsh brought me back from Thornwood Station after I'd seen the cabin Ezra built and made my decision to stay, I woke to find someone had slipped a note under my hotel room door. Miss Blackwell, if you truly mean to claim Thornwood, come to the Wren place north of town at first light. You have much to learn and little time. Pale Moon. I didn't know who Pale Moon was, but the note carried an authority I recognized. Someone who didn't waste words. Someone who expected to be obeyed. I dressed in the sturdy clothes I'd brought from Boston, ate a quick breakfast of hard bread and coffee, and asked the hotel keeper for directions to the Wren property. You sure about that, miss? He asked, eyeing me with doubt. Pale Moon don't suffer fools, and she sure as hell don't coddle city women thinking they can play at mountain life. I'm not playing, I said. The Wren place sat 3 miles north of Columbine Creek, tucked into a fold of hills, where a spring-fed creek ran year-round. As I approached on the borrowed horse Sheriff Marsh had arranged in, I saw a woman emerge from a log cabin. She was perhaps 38 Ute by her features, wearing a mix of native dress and frontier clothing that spoke of 2 worlds merged into practical survival. You're late, she said, though I'd ridden as fast as I could. Sun's been up half an hour. I came as soon as I got your note. Excuses are for dead people. Living people arrive on time. She looked me over with eyes that missed nothing. Ezra wrote me about you, said you had education and medical training, said you were smart. He did not say if you could survive. We will find out. A young man emerged from the cabin behind her, tall and lean, maybe 27, with features that marked him as her son. Half Ute, half white, caught between worlds, like so many in this territory. This is my son, Flint, Pale Moon said. He will teach you to shoot, to track, to read sign. I will teach you the rest. If you live through the learning, maybe you have chance. Pleased to meet you, I said. Flint said nothing, just studied me with dark eyes that held skepticism bordering on contempt. A city woman playing at frontier life. He'd seen it before I could tell. Seen them fail and run home. I would not be one of them. Today, Pale Moon announced, you learned to not die stupid. Over the next 6 weeks, I learned what survival truly meant. Fire came first. On my second day, Pale Moon took away the matches I'd brought and handed me a bow drill, a flat piece of wood, and a small bundle of dried grass. Make fire, she said. I tried for an hour. My hands blistered. My arms shook with exhaustion. The wood grew warm but never caught. Pale Moon sat on a stump and watched without comment, her face as impassive as the mountain peaks rising behind her. Finally, I threw the drill down. I can't do it. Then you freeze, she said simply. Winter comes in 5 weeks. First snow might come tonight. No fire means no heat, no cooking, no melting snow for water, no way to signal for help if injured. No fire means death. So you will do it or you will die. Those are only choices. I picked up the drill again. My hands were bleeding now, the skin torn open where the shaft had rubbed raw. I pressed harder, moved faster, ignored the pain shooting up my arms. The wood smoked. The smoke thickened. And then, like a miracle I didn't deserve, a tiny ember glowed in the char cloth beneath. I'd never been so proud of anything in my life. Adequate, Pale Moon said. Tomorrow you do it in snow, then in rain, then with wet wood, then with hands too cold to feel properly, because Mountain does not care if conditions are perfect. Water safety came next. She showed me how to test streams for sickness, how to recognize the parasites that would leave me too weak to survive. Always boil, she said. Always. Food storage was a lesson written in claw marks. That night I made a mistake. I'd left a haunch of elk hanging in Ezra's smokehouse to cure planning to move it to the cache in the morning. Sometime past midnight, a sound woke me. Not loud, just wrong. A scraping, snuffling sound that raised every hair on my neck. I grabbed Ezra's rifle and moved to the window. In the moonlight, I could see a shape at the smokehouse. Massive, dark, moving with the rolling gait of something that had never learned to fear anything. Grizzly bear, maybe 800 pounds of muscle and hunger. I'd never seen anything so terrifying. The bear tore the smokehouse door off its hinges like it was made of paper. The sound of wood splintering cracked across the clearing, loud as rifle fire. I watched him disappear inside and moments later emerge with my entire elk haunch in his jaws. He sat down 20 feet from my cabin and began to eat. The sounds he made were almost obscene in their satisfaction. Crunching bones, tearing meat, little grunts of pleasure. I didn't shoot. Pale Moon had been clear. Never shoot bear unless it charges. Wounded bear is angry bear. Better to let him take food than fight battle you cannot win. So I watched him eat my elk. Watched him lick his paws clean when he was done. Watched him amble back into the darkness. In the morning, Pale Moon found me moving all my remaining food stores to the cache, every last scrap. Good, she said. Expensive lesson, but you live to learn it. Shooting came harder than I expected. The first time I fired Ezra's .44 revolver, the recoil nearly broke my wrist. The barrel jumped up and to the right. My shoulder ached from the kick, my ears rang from the blast, and my hands shook. Flint stood behind me, arms crossed. Again. I fired 5 more times. Hit nothing. You are terrible at this, Flint observed. I know. If bear charges, you die. If Kane Bridger comes back, you die. You understand, so I understand. Good, now watch. He took the revolver, checked the cylinder, and fired 6 shots so fast they sounded almost like one continuous roar. All 6 tin cans exploded in sequence. He handed the gun back. Practice. 2 hours every day. No excuses. Over 3 weeks, I practiced until my shoulder was one continuous bruise. The breakthrough came on a morning when frost turned the grass white. A jackrabbit burst from cover 50 yards away, running flat out. Without thinking, I raised the rifle and fired. The rabbit dropped mid-stride. Flint actually smiled. That was decent. Decent? Yes, not good, not great, but good enough you might not die immediately. Keep practicing. The knife work nearly broke me. Pale Moon brought a rabbit one morning and laid it on the cabin porch. Gut it, clean it, cook it, eat it. I'd stitched human intestines back into abdominal cavities, but I'd never killed anything myself. Never been responsible for the transformation from living creature to food. The rabbit was still warm. When I made the first cut, the smell hit me and I turned away and vomited. Pale Moon watched without sympathy. Squeamishness is luxury. Out here, you eat what you kill or you starve. I went back to the rabbit, forced my hands to do what my stomach protested. By the time I was done, my hands were red to the wrists and tears were running down my face. Good, Pale Moon said. First time should hurt, shows you respect what you take, but second time will be easier. Robin Hayes taught me trapping. He showed me Ezra's routes on hand-drawn maps, every set marked and numbered. Mr. Thornwood had 80 traps total, Robin explained. 47 along Crystal Creek, 33 up at Beaver Meadows. Check each line every 3 days. He showed me proper placement, 6 inches underwater at beaver runs, anchoring chains in deep water so the animal would drown quickly, scent baits using castoreum, the drowning wire system. You gotta dispatch them clean, he said, showing me the club technique. One hit fast and sure. Mr. Thornwood said if you're going to take a life for your living, you owe it to that life to do it right. The first time I caught a beaver, I sat beside the water and cried before I could bring myself to kill it. The animal looked at me with dark eyes that held no accusation, just animal acceptance. I raised the club and brought it down hard. Watched the light go out. Robin found me an hour later, still sitting beside the body. It gets easier, he said quietly. Not because you stop caring, because you learn to hold caring and necessity in the same hand. Pale Moon taught me to read sign. We spent days walking Thornwood's territory, her pointing out stories written in tracks and scat. Elk, she said, kneeling beside hoof prints. Bull 5 years old. Healthy. Track is 6 hours old. He went toward high meadow. She taught me to age tracks by edge crispness, to distinguish species, to tell calm walking from scared running. Human tracks from animal. Always watch for human tracks near trap lines, she warned. You see boot prints where they should not be. Someone is scouting your territory. We found such prints one afternoon near Beaver Meadows. Fresh boot tracks less than a day old circling 3 of Ezra's traps. Pale Moon's face became stone. 2 men. They found your traps, studied placement, moved on. This is scouting. They will come back. Kane Bridger. Maybe. Whoever it is, they know you are here alone. They think you are easy target. She looked at me. Are you biome? No? Prove it. Starting now, you check traps armed. You see anyone who does not belong, you shoot to kill. I swallowed hard. Yes. Weather reading became critical. Pale Moon showed me mare's tail clouds that meant storm in 24 hours. The drop in pressure I could feel in my joints. How animals behaved when bad weather approached. I got my first test in early November. I woke to bone-deep ache and saw the warning clouds. I spent the day securing everything. Extra firewood inside, water in every container, horses in stable with hay, rope between cabin and outhouse. The storm hit at sunset, a wall of white swallowing the world. For 3 days, wind screamed and snow fell so thick I couldn't see 20 feet. I kept the fire burning, constant melting snow for water, eating pemmican, and trying not to think about death. When it ended, I'd survived. Alone. Pale Moon arrived 2 days later on snowshoes. She looked at my cabin, the cleared paths, the healthy horses. You learned, she said. Good. I ran my first solo trap line in late November. 80 traps across 25 miles. 2 days of travel, 60-pound pack. First time on snowshoes. Each trap required checking dispatching, if successful, resetting. Reading sign for tampering. Navigating by landmarks under snow. All while watching for predators and remembering a single mistake could mean death. I caught 8 beaver that first day, 3 marten, 1 fox. By sunset at Beaver Meadows, I could barely stand. But I made camp, built fire, hung food from bears, set up bedroll. Wolves howled in the darkness. I slept maybe 3 hours, waking at every sound. Morning came. I continued the circuit. It was just after noon on the second day at Trap 67 along the North Fork of Crystal Creek that I found Kane Bridger waiting. He sat on a fallen log cleaning his rifle. Tall man, maybe 38, scarred face, flat killer's eyes. My hand dropped to my revolver, 40 yards apart. Well, well, he said, the nun who thinks she's a mountain man. State your business or ride on. He smiled without warmth. Direct. I like that. Here's my business. Sister Grace, I'm the man who killed Ezra Thornwood. Cormac Steele paid me $800 to do it. He'll pay me $1,200 to kill you. But I'm generous. Leave tonight. Sign the land over to Steele. Live. My mouth went dry. He was confessing. Openly. Because he thought I was no threat. And if I don't, then accidents happen. Women alone in wilderness disappear all the time. Grizzly attack. Fell through ice. Got lost in storm. Be a shame. I forced myself to breathe, to think. I could draw and fire, but he was faster, more experienced. Or I could play for time. How do I know Steele will honor a land transfer? Kane shrugged. He wants the land legal. Water rights for his mines. You sign over, you live. That's the deal. I need time to think. You got until I finish this cigarette. He pulled out tobacco and began rolling one. His attention divided for just a second. That second was all I needed. My hand was already moving, pulling the revolver, bringing it up, thumbing back the hammer. Kane saw the movement and dove sideways, but he was a heartbeat too slow. I fired 3 times fast. First shot missed. Second hit his shoulder, spun him around. Third would have taken his chest, but he'd already disappeared behind the log. "You bitch!" he screamed and returned fire. I was already moving, throwing myself behind a pine as his bullets tore bark next to my head. "You just signed your death warrant." I checked my revolver. 3 rounds left. I had spare ammunition, but no time to reload. Make these count. The forest went quiet except Kane moving through snow. Wounded but not disabled. Stalking me. Pale Moon's voice in my head. "Fear is information. Use it." I heard him to my right, moving fast, flanking. I spun out and fired at the shadow. Missed. He returned fire. The bullet tugged my coat sleeve. 2 rounds left. "You're dead," Kane shouted. But his voice sounded strained, the shoulder wound bleeding him. If I could keep him moving, maybe he'd make a mistake. "You murdered 3 good men for money. Easy, I sleep on cash and don't give a damn." He fired again, but the shot went wide. Getting desperate. I heard him reload. He was low on ammunition too. We were locked in stalemate. Silence stretched. Minutes passed. I couldn't hear him. Then a sound, almost imperceptible. Branch creaking. 15 yards left. Trying to circle back. I moved silently using Pale Moon's teaching. Came around a spruce and saw him. Back to me. Scanning where he thought I was hiding. 1 clear shot. Center mass. 20 feet. "Kane," I said quietly. He spun, rifle coming up, but I was already squeezing the trigger. The revolver bucked. The shot took him high in the chest. He staggered backward, rifle firing wild into the air. Then his legs gave out and he dropped into snow. I approached carefully, revolver trained, ready to fire my last round. But he wasn't getting up. The chest shot had punctured a lung. Blood bubbled from his mouth. "Should have left," he gasped. "I'm not a nun anymore," I said. His eyes found mine. Surprise, then anger, then something like respect. "Hell of a shot." Then he died. I stood there watching blood stain the snow. I'd killed a man, taken a human life. The weight pressed down like all the snow on all the mountains. But I didn't regret it. He'd murdered Ezra. He would have murdered me. Some deaths are necessary. I searched his body, found $200, his rifle and ammunition, and a letter from Cormac Steele detailing payments for services rendered in removing obstacles to progress. The letter named Kane as killer of 6 trappers, including Ezra Thornwood. Evidence. Finally, I left Kane's body where it fell. The mountain would take care of it. I finished checking my trap line and made my way back to Thornwood, and as fast as snowshoes would carry me. Robin was waiting worried because I was late. When he saw my face, the blood on my clothes, he knew. "Miss Grace, get Sheriff Marsh. Tell him Kane Bridger's dead. Tell him I have evidence connecting Cormac Steele to murders. Tell him to come fast." Robin's eyes went wide. "You killed Kane Bridger." He didn't give me choice. 2 days later, Sheriff Marsh arrived with his deputy and 3 men. I showed them Kane's body still frozen. Gave them the letter. Described everything. The sheriff read Steele's letter twice, face darkening. "This is it. This is enough. With your testimony and this letter, we can arrest Steele." "What about me? I killed a man." Marsh looked at me steadily. "Self-defense. Kane admitted planning to murder you, fired first. You had no retreat. Any judge will call it justified. But you might be the hero who brought down the man terrorizing trappers for 2 years." Hero sat wrong. I wasn't a hero, just someone who'd refused to die quietly. We formulated a plan. Lure Steele into making threats before witnesses, then arrest him. Use me as bait. Flint proposed specifics. Spread word Grace is reconsidering. That mountain's too hard. Word reaches Steele. He'll come himself to close the deal. And if he sends more guns, then we kill them too, Flint said flatly. But Kane was his muscle. With Kane dead, Steele's got nobody he trusts. He'll come himself. The plan required precision. Sheriff and deputy would hide in barn loft, Flint in woods east, Robin in woods west. I'd be on the porch visible armed, but not obviously. The bait had to convince. I rode to Columbine Creek 3 days later, selling supplies. When Widow Grimm asked how I was managing, I let my voice crack. It's hard, Mrs. Grimm, harder than I imagined. I'm not sure I can make it through winter alone. Her eyes lit up. Are you thinking of selling deer? I'm thinking about it. Mr. Steele made an offer. Maybe I should have taken it. Within 2 days, Steele sent word he'd like to meet. Come to Thornwood Station at noon day after tomorrow. The morning of the meeting, we took positions. Sheriff and deputy climbed a barn loft before dawn. Flint disappeared into eastern woods. Robin positioned west with Ezra's scattergun. I sat on the porch and waited, revolver heavy on my hip. They came at noon exactly. 6 riders, Steele in the lead on a fine bay, dressed in expensive clothes, silver watch chain glinting. Every inch the successful businessman. The 5 men with him were hard cases, hired guns, eyes constantly moving, hands near weapons. They stopped 30 feet from the porch. Miss Blackwell, Steele said, voice smooth, I'm glad you've come to your senses. I haven't agreed to anything. I said I'd listen to your offer. Of course, very prudent. I'm prepared to offer $1,000 for your claim. Extremely generous given the difficulties you've been experiencing. Difficulties you created. His smile didn't waver. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Kane Bridger worked for you, killed Ezra Thornwood on your orders. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I pulled the letter from my coat. He was carrying this when I killed him. Your handwriting, detailing payments for murder. Something flickered behind his eyes, anger, fear, calculation. That's absurd. That could be anything. A forgery. Sheriff Marsh seems to think it's genuine. The sheriff isn't here. Actually, Sheriff Marsh called from the barn. I am. He stood in the loft rifle, trained on Steele. Flint and Robin emerged from tree lines, weapons raised. Steele's men reached for guns. Don't, Marsh barked. You're surrounded and outgunned. The world balanced on a knife edge. Steele calculating odds. His hand drifted toward his coat. Steele, I said quietly, the only reason you are not dead is because the sheriff wants you alive. Don't give me reason to change his mind. He saw something in my face. The woman who'd killed Kane Bridger, who'd survived everything this land threw at her. He saw I meant it. His hand moved away from his coat. This is a mistake. I have lawyers, friends in Denver. You can't prove anything. We can prove enough, Marsh said, climbing down. Cormac Steele, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, hiring criminal elements, and claim jumping. Your men can ride out if they drop weapons now, or join you in jail. One by one, Steele's guns dropped rifles and pistols into snow. They weren't paid enough to die for it, Tim. 2 weeks later, Steele stood trial in Columbine Creek Courthouse. Evidence was overwhelming. My testimony, the letter, records from his mining office showing payments corresponding to trapper disappearances. Under pressure, he confessed. Named Kane as his killer for 14 murders over 4 years. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. He'd die in a Denver cell. I felt nothing when sentence was read. No triumph, just tired relief it was finally over. My homestead claim was approved that same day. The territorial land commissioner rode from Denver to personally hand me the papers. Miss Blackwell, your claim under the Homestead Act continuation clause is hereby approved. You have 3 years to prove up the land through habitation and improvement. At that time, Thornwood Station will be yours in perpetuity. I held the papers and felt the weight of what they represented. Not just land, not just ownership, but choice. The choice to stay or go, to build or abandon, to be whoever I wanted to be. For the first time since leaving Boston, I cried. Not from grief or fear, but from pure, overwhelming gratitude that I'd been brave enough to choose the hard road. But winter was coming. Real winter, the kind that would test everything I'd learned. November became December, snow deepened, temperatures dropped, and I faced the ultimate trial, surviving completely alone through 6 months of mountain winter. Pale Moon visited one last time before the high passes closed. "You have learned much," she said, "but winter will teach you more. Things I cannot teach. Loneliness, doubt, the voices in your head when silence lasts too long. These are hardest lessons. How do I survive them? Same way you survive everything, one day at a time. When you wanted to quit, you think of tomorrow. When tomorrow seems impossible, you think of next hour. When hour seems too long, you think of next breath. You survive by surviving. No other way." She left me supplies, extra ammunition, smoked elk, herbs for medicine, and one piece of advice. Do not let cabin fever make you do stupid things. When walls feel too close, you go outside even in storm. You walk, you move. You remind body it is alive. Stillness is death in winter. Then she was gone, and I was alone. The first week was almost pleasant. I had routines: wake at dawn, build fire, melt snow for water, breakfast, check trap lines close to cabin, repair equipment, read by lamplight, sleep. The second week, loneliness crept in. No human voice but my own. No conversation. Just wind and silence. The third week, I started talking to myself. To Ezra's ghost. To God. To the mountain. "I'm still here," I'd say out loud. Still breathing, still fighting. Week 4 brought the first real test. A blizzard that lasted 5 days. Snow piled so high against the cabin, I had to dig through the window to get out. Temperature dropped to 30 below. I burned through half my firewood, keeping the stove going constantly. I didn't leave the cabin for 5 days. By the 5th day, the walls felt like they were closing in. I could feel panic building like pressure behind my eyes. Pale Moon's voice. "Go outside, even in storm." I forced myself out into the blizzard. Walked 50 yards from the cabin and back. Freezing. Terrifying. But when I came back inside, the walls didn't feel quite so close. Week 6, I started seeing things. Shadows that moved wrong. Ezra sitting at the table. My mother in the doorway. I knew they weren't real, but knowing didn't make them go away. Week 8, I woke to a sound. Scratching at the door. Not wind, something alive. I grabbed the rifle and waited. More scratching. Then a low growl that made my blood freeze. Mountain lion. I'd never dealt with one before. Grizzly, yes. Wolves, yes. But mountain lion was different. Smarter. More patient. More willing to enter human spaces when hungry enough. The scratching continued. Testing the door. Looking for weakness. I fired a shot through the door. Not trying to hit, just scare. Silence. Then the window shattered. The mountain lion came through in an explosion of glass and wood and snarling fury. Massive. Maybe 140 pounds of muscle and teeth in absolute murderous intent. I didn't have time to aim the rifle. The cat was on me before I could bring the barrel round. We went down together. I felt claws rip through my shirt, felt hot breath on my neck. The knife. Ezra's skinning knife on my belt. I pulled it free and drove it up into the cat's throat. It screamed, a sound like nothing I'd ever heard. Thrashed and clawed. I stabbed again, again, again. Finally it went limp, dead weight on top of me. I lay there under the corpse for I don't know how long, shaking, bleeding from claw marks on my shoulders and arms, but alive. When I could move, I pushed the body off, stood on trembling legs, looked at the destruction. Broken window, blood everywhere. Mountain lion dead in my bedroom. I started laughing, couldn't help it. Hysterical laughter that became crying, that became laughing again. "I killed a mountain lion," I said to the empty room, "with a knife in my own bedroom." Pale Moon was right. Winter taught lessons no person could. I cleaned the wounds with whiskey, stitched the deep ones myself one-handed using a mirror. 13 stitches total. Developed fever for 3 days. Survived through willow bark tea and stubbornness. Week 12, I started seeing Ezra's ghost regularly. He'd sit by the fire and we'd talk. "Why do you punish yourself?" Ghost Ezra asked. "You've proven you're strong. You can accept help now." "If I accept help, I prove I need it. Then I'm weak." Strength isn't refusing help. Strength is knowing when to ask for it and when to offer it. I'm afraid if I let Flint in, I'll lose myself again. Like Convent. Flint isn't Convent. He wants to stand beside you, not own you. I knew Ghost Ezra was just my mind talking to itself, but his words made sense anyway. Week 16 March finally came. The snow began to melt. The passes opened, and Pale Moon arrived on the first clear day, bringing Flint with her. They found me gaunt, scarred, exhausted, but alive. Flint saw the mountain lion pelt tanned and hanging, the stitches on my shoulder, the haunted look in my eyes. Jesus, Grace, what happened? Mountain lion broke through the window. Week 8, I killed it with a knife. He stared. You could have died. But I didn't. I survived. I proved I could do it alone. And now I know I can. That's what I needed. To know that if I'm alone, I won't break. Flint looked at me for a long moment. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Also the stubbornest. Thank you. Spring came fully. I worked trap lines again with human company. Pale Moon visited weekly. Robin came to help with repairs. And Flint started staying. Not living at Thornwood, but visiting, working alongside me, talking through long evenings, building something that felt like friendship, but carried an undercurrent of something more. One evening in April, sitting by the fire after a day working fence lines, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Grace, would you ever consider marrying again? I know you came here to marry Ezra, but would you think about choosing partnership again? I looked at him. This man who'd taught me to shoot, who'd stood with me against steel, who'd respected my need to prove myself before offering anything more. I need to go to Boston first, I said. What? Mother Superior is dying. She asked for me. I need to make peace with that part of my life before I can fully choose this one. Flint nodded slowly. And when I come back, ask me again. Boston felt like a grave I'd forgotten I was buried in. The train carried me east through landscapes that grew smaller with every mile. Mountains giving way to plains, giving way to cities that pressed against the sky with smoke and noise. I sat by the window in my mountain clothes. Leather trousers, wool shirt, boots made for snow. Other passengers stared. A woman across the aisle leaned over. Excuse me, miss, but are those men's trousers? Yes, ma'am. That's highly inappropriate. Yes, ma'am, I said again and watched her face turn red. I didn't care. That Grace who worried about scandal had died somewhere between Boston and Colorado. The woman on this train was someone else entirely. Someone who'd killed a mountain lion with a knife. Someone who'd put a bullet through Cane Bridger. Someone who owned 640 acres and knew exactly how to survive on them. September 1887 brought me back to a city I barely recognized. Or maybe I'd changed so much that familiar streets became foreign. I took a cab to Our Lady of Mercy Convent and paid with coins that felt strange in hands accustomed to skinning knives and rifle triggers. Mother Superior was dying. The letter Father Murphy had brought to Thornwood made that clear, consumption eating her from inside. She had weeks, maybe less. The young nun who answered the door didn't recognize me. I'm here to see Mother Superior. Tell her Grace Blackwell has come. The nun's eyes went wide. Sister Grace, but we heard you'd gone to Wilderness and... She trailed off. I did. I'm still there. This is just a visit. She led me through halls I'd walked 10,000 times. Past the chapel, past the infirmary. Everything exactly the same. I was the only thing that had changed. Mother Superior lay in a small room propped on pillows because lying flat made her cough blood. She looked like a skeleton wrapped in parchment, but her eyes were still sharp. Grace, she whispered, you came. You asked for me. I thought you might refuse. After what I did. I pulled a chair close. You helped me leave, gave me money, gave me blessing. I haven't forgotten. She coughed, wet rattling. When she could speak, her voice was weaker. Tell me, did you find what you were looking for? I found more than I was looking for. I found myself. And the man Ezra, dead before I arrived, murdered for his land. Grief crossed her face. Oh, child, I'm sorry. Don't be. I claimed the land anyway, fought for it, killed for it. It's mine now. Her eyes widened. You killed a man named Cain Bridger. He murdered Ezra and others, tried to murder me. I shot him through the chest at 20 feet and watched him die. Long silence. Then she said, "Are you sorry?" "No, he needed killing. The world is better without him." That doesn't sound like something a woman of faith would say. I'm not sure I am a woman of faith anymore, at least not the kind you tried to make me. What kind are you, then? I thought about talking to the mountain instead of to God, about feeling his presence more in silence than in any church, about faith as something earned through survival. I believe God is bigger than buildings and rituals. I believe he's in the mountain and the creek and the grizzly that tested me. I believe he made me strong enough to survive, and using that strength isn't sin. It's gratitude. Mother Superior closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears tracked down her cheeks. I was wrong about so many things. Wrong to try to cage you. Wrong to believe safety was the same as sanctity. Wrong to choose fear over courage. You're talking about the farmer. You remember. Of course, Vuerto. She reached out a trembling hand and I took it. Her skin felt like paper. Grace, I have a confession. That letter I showed you. I didn't just receive it. I answered it. I said yes. I agreed to marry him. I stared. What happened? I got scared. 3 days before leaving, I went to the Mother Superior and begged her to stop me. She locked me in my cell until the train departed, told me she was saving me from a mistake, and I let her. I chose the cage because I was afraid of the sky. Do you know what happened to him? He wrote once more, said he was disappointed but understood, said he'd find someone braver. Then I never heard from him again. She coughed blood. I wonder sometimes what my life would have been. Children, grandchildren, a farm and purpose and love. Instead, I got this. 42 years watching other people's children behind stone walls. It's not too late, I said, though we both knew it was. For me, yes, but not for you. Grace, whatever you do, don't make my mistake. Don't choose safety over life. Don't let fear convince you being alone is better than being vulnerable. I thought of Flint, his question last spring, my need to come here first. There's a man, half Ute, half white, strong, kind, patient. He asked me to marry him. And you said no. I said not yet. I said I needed a year to prove I could survive alone, to prove I didn't need him. Mother Superior's grip tightened. Why? Because in the convent I belong to the church. If I marry Flint, I'll belong to him. I wanted to belong to myself first. Child, listen. This is important. Partnership is not ownership. A good man doesn't want to own you. He wants to share with you. There's a difference. You can be whole on your own and choose to build something with someone. They're not mutually exclusive. How do you know you never tried? Exactly, which is how I know I was wrong. She pulled me closer, breath wheezing. Don't repeat my mistakes. Don't die alone and full of regrets about the life you were too afraid to live. I'm not afraid, mush. Liar, you're terrified, not of the mountain or the bears or the killers. You're afraid of loving someone and losing them, like you lost your parents, like you lost Ezra before you ever met him. You're afraid that if you let Flint matter too much, his death will destroy you. The accuracy hit like a blow. Yes, I whispered, I'm afraid of that. Then you're human, but don't let fear make your choices. If you love him, choose him. Not because you need him, because you want him. That's what makes it real. She died 3 days later, peacefully in sleep with me, holding her hand. I prayed over her body with the rosary she'd given me years before. But I wasn't praying to the God of the convent. I was praying to the God of mountains, asking him to show her all the things she'd been too afraid to see in life. I stayed in Boston 2 weeks, settling possessions, attending funeral, meeting the new Mother Superior who seemed scandalized by my clothes and envious of my freedom. I visited my old friend Mary Ashton. She lived in a tiny apartment, her life exactly as I'd left it 9 years before. Same job, same small world, same careful existence. Grace, she exclaimed, my God, you look so different, so wild. I am wild, in the best possible way. She made tea and we sat in her cramped parlor while she peppered me with questions about Colorado and trapping and surviving winters. But underneath her excitement, I could see something else, longing, fear, the same war that had once raged in me. Do you ever think about coming back teaching again? There's an opening at the school. I looked around her apartment, narrow windows showing only the building across the street, coal smoke staining in the air. The life that had once seemed safe and now felt like suffocation. No, this isn't home anymore. Maybe it never was. But what about safety, security? What happens when you're old? I'll figure it out, same way I figured out everything else. By doing it instead of fearing it. Mary looked at me with tears in her eyes. I wish I was brave like you. You could be. Bravery isn't something you were born with. It's something you choose every day. You just have to choose it. But I could see in her face she wouldn't. She'd stay in Boston, teaching other people's children and wondering what might have been. Just like Mother Superior. Just like I would have done if I hadn't torn that advertisement and written that first letter. I left Boston on a cold October morning with no regrets and no plans to return. I'd bought supplies with my fur money, medical equipment, books on veterinary medicine, seeds for spring, and one small thing purchased on impulse from a jeweler, a simple gold wedding band, sized for a man's hand. The train carried me west through landscapes that grew larger and more breathtaking with each mile, mountains rising like cathedral spires, valleys so vast they made my heart ache, skies so big it hurt to look at. This was home. I arrived in Columbine Creek mid-October as aspens turned gold and first serious cold settled into the high country. I'd sent a telegram ahead to Sheriff Marsh asking him to pass word to Thornwood. Flint was waiting at the settlement when my wagon arrived. He stood by his horse tall and still, his face showing nothing but his eyes tracked my every movement as I climbed down. You came back, he said. I told you I would. I know, but I was afraid Boston would reclaim you. I walked up to him close enough to see the scar on his face from the fight with Kane Bridger. Easier isn't better. I belong here. I belong at Thornwood. And I paused, gathering courage. I think I belong with you, if the offer still stands. Something shifted in his face, hope carefully guarded. What changed? I watched a woman die full of regrets about the life she was too afraid to live. I don't want to be her. I don't want to die alone wondering what might have been. Grace, I'm not asking you to choose me over your independence. I'm asking you to choose me with your independence. There's a difference. I know. It took me a year to understand it, but I know now. We rode to Thornwood together, not speaking much, just being together in the way people can when words aren't necessary. The station looked exactly as I'd left it. Cabin solid, cash full, trap lines waiting. Home. That night by the fire with coffee and silence between us, Flint asked the question I'd been waiting for. Will you marry me, Grace Thornwood? I pulled the ring from my pocket and held it out. I bought this in Boston. I was hoping you'd ask. He took the ring, his hand shaking slightly. Is that a yes? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Because partnership chosen freely is stronger than any partnership born from necessity. Because you make my life bigger, not smaller. Because I love you. He slipped the ring onto his finger, and then he kissed me. The kiss tasted like snow and pine and coming home. We married in early December in the small church in Columbine Creek, with Father Murphy officiating and half the settlement in attendance. I wore clean buckskins and wildflowers in my hair, and Pale Moon's gift, a beaded belt made in Ute tradition. Flint wore a white shirt and dark trousers and carried his father's medicine bag. Our vows were simple promises to each other. I promise to respect your independence, Flint said, voice steady, to trust your strength, to stand beside you, never in front, never behind, to build with you, not for you, to let you be whole. I promise to share this life fully, I answered, not surrender it, to be your partner in all things, to keep choosing you every day deliberately, to honor what we build together without losing what I built alone. Father Murphy smiled. I've seen many weddings, but few where both parties understand so clearly what they're promising. Go with God's blessing and build something lasting. The celebration after at Pale Moona's cabin was simple and joyful. Elk roast and berry pies and whiskey, fiddle music and dancing and toasts. Sheriff Marsh raised his glass. To Grace, who proved everyone wrong, including herself, and to Flint, who was smart enough to wait for her. Pale Moon's toast was simpler. To partnership of equals, what all marriages should be, and too few are. Robin Hayes, now 19 and running his own trap lines, grinned. To the toughest woman in the Rockies, and the man brave enough to marry her. We spent that winter at Thornwood together, learning the rhythms of shared life. The cabin that had seemed spacious for one felt intimate with two. We worked trap lines together, covering ground faster and safer than either could alone. We cooked and cleaned and maintained the property as a team, each bringing different skills to common purpose. The nights were long. We filled them with conversation that ranged across every topic. Flint told me about growing up between two worlds, white and Ute, fully accepted by neither, finding his place only in wilderness, where heritage mattered less than competence. I told him about the convent, about the slow death of living a life someone else had chosen, about the fear that had driven me there, and the courage it took to leave. "Do you miss it?" he asked one night, snow falling heavy outside while we sat by the fire. "The religious life. I miss the parts that were real, the work in the infirmary, helping people. But the rest, the prayers that felt hollow, the sense that I was waiting instead of doing, no, I don't miss that." "You still pray, though. I've seen you. Different kind of prayer, not asking for things, just being grateful for what I have. Talking to God like he's listening because I feel him out here in a way I never did in that stone building." My mother says the Creator is in all things. Mountain Creek Eagle Bear. She says white man's God and Ute Creator are probably same being, just wearing different faces. Your mother is wise. She likes you, respects you. That's high praise from her. I like her too. She saved my life a dozen times over, teaching me to survive. He reached over and took my hand. "I'm glad you survived. Glad you chose this life. Glad you chose me." So am I. The winter of 1887 to 1888 was brutal, even by mountain standards. Snowfall measured in feet. Temperatures that dropped so low trees exploded from internal ice. Winds that screamed like demons. But we survived it together. When one of us was weak, the other was strong. When cabin fever made us short-tempered, we learned to give each other space. When supplies ran low, we rationed carefully and planned ahead. In late February, during a brief warm spell, Pale Moon arrived with news. The Territorial Land Office sent word. They approved your application for expanded homestead, additional 160 acres adjoining Thornwood to the west. You can file claim immediately. Flint and I looked at each other. 800 acres total, enough to expand significantly, enough to build something that would last generations. "We'll take it," I said. "File the papers." "Good, you'll need help proving it up, though. Building, improving, showing active use. That's a lot of work for two people." "We'll manage," Flint said. "We always do." But spring brought an unexpected complication. One morning in early March, I woke up sick. Not injured, not ill from bad water, just sick in a way I recognized from the convent infirmary. I was pregnant. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Flint and I hadn't discussed children, hadn't planned for them, but here it was growing inside me. I told Flint that evening. We sat by the fire after dinner and I just said it straight out. "I'm pregnant." He went very still. Then his face split into the widest smile I'd ever seen. "Truly, truly, maybe 2 months along. Baby will come in October." He pulled me close, his hand resting on my stomach, even though there was nothing to feel yet. "A child, our child. Half you, half me. All mountain. You're happy." Happy doesn't cover it. I'm overwhelmed, grateful, terrified, all at once. Join the club. I'm terrified too. "You'll be amazing, mother. You're strong, capable, smart. Everything child needs." Women die in childbirth, Flint, especially out here. My mother will help. She's delivered dozens of babies. You'll have her knowledge and mine. And if anything goes wrong, he paused, we'll face it together. But pregnancy brought its own terrors. Morning sickness, exhaustion, fears that multiplied in darkness. Pale Moon visited weekly through spring and summer, monitoring my progress. She brought herbs to ease nausea, showed me exercises to strengthen my body, told me stories about other women who'd given birth in wilderness and survived. "You are strong," she said firmly when I voiced my fears. "Your body knows what to do. Women have been doing this since beginning of time." Summer passed in a blur of preparation. Flint built a cradle from aspen wood carved with Ute symbols of protection. I sewed tiny clothes from soft deer hide, made blankets from rabbit fur, gathered the supplies for birth. We worked trap lines when I could, stored food when I couldn't. Through it all, I felt the baby grow. Felt it move for the first time in July. Felt it kick in August. Felt it shift and settle in September, preparing. The labor started on a cold October morning, 3 weeks before I'd expected it. I woke with my water broken and contractions already strong. Flint rode for pale moon while I paced the cabin, breathing through pain, trying to remember everything she'd taught me. It hurt worse than anything I'd ever experienced. Worse than grizzly claws. Worse than knife wounds. Worse than anything. Pale Moon arrived within 2 hours, bringing her birthing supplies and calm competence. She examined me, checked the baby's position, nodded with satisfaction. Everything is good. Baby is head down. Now you just work. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain that came in waves. I screamed, I cursed, I begged for it to stop. But it didn't stop. Flint held my hand through all of it, his face pale but steady, murmuring encouragement. At some point, the pain changed, became urgent. My body took over, pushing without my conscious control. That's it, Pale Moon said. Push with the pain. I pushed until I felt like I was being torn apart. Pushed until I was sure I would die. Pushed until finally I felt something shift and release. The baby came in a rush of fluid and blood, sliding into Pale Moon's waiting hands. The sound it made, that first outraged cry, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. Boy, Pale Moon announced. Healthy, strong lungs, perfect. She laid him on my chest, this tiny squalling creature. I looked at him and felt my whole world realign. This was my son, mine and Flint's. Born of our love, born into this hard, beautiful life we'd chosen. Hello, I whispered. Hello, little one. Welcome to the mountain. Flint was crying, tears streaming down his face as he touched the baby's tiny hand. What should we name him? I thought of Ezra Thornwood, the man who'd given me the chance at this life, even though he never lived to see it. Ezra, I said. We'll name him Ezra, after the man who brought me here. Our son Ezra Ash, born in October 1888 in a log cabin 9,000 feet up in the Colorado Rockies, became the future we were building. As he grew, Thornwood Station grew with him. Flint and I expanded operations, built a second cabin for seasonal workers, cleared and fenced additional pasture, filed on the extra 160 acres, and began improving it. Robin Hayes became our first full-time employee, then brought in 2 younger men who wanted to learn. My medical practice expanded too. Word spread that Grace Ash knew healing arts. Trappers and miners and settlers began showing up with injuries and illnesses. I treated broken bones and infected wounds and fevers and birthed babies for women who had nowhere else to turn. I charged what people could afford: a haunch of venison for setting a broken arm, a cord of firewood for delivering a baby. Fair trade in a country where money was scarce but labor and skill had value. The years passed. Ezra grew strong and wild, running through the forest like he was born to it. I taught him to read using the books I'd brought from Boston. Mathematics and history and the proper names of plants and animals. We had 2 more children. A daughter we named Sarah in 1892, born during a spring snowstorm, with Pale Moon's skilled hands guiding her into the world. And another son, Thomas, in 1895, arriving so fast we barely had time to prepare. Thornwood Station became known throughout the territory as a place of safety and competence. Trappers would stop to trade news. Injured men would detour to our door knowing I could help. Families would camp in our lower pasture, grateful for the protection our presence offered. We built something that mattered, something that would outlast us. But life in the mountains exacts a price, even from those who love it most. It was 1923, 37 years after I first arrived in Colorado. I was 61 years old. Flint was 63. Our children were grown and scattered. Ezra ran his own trap lines out of a cabin 10 miles north. Sarah had become a doctor, working in Denver but visiting when she could. Thomas worked as a territorial ranger. Flint and I still ran Thornwood together, moving slower than we used to, but still capable. That spring, he was checking the high traps alone. I stayed behind because my knees ached from old injuries and the climb to Beaver Meadows had become more difficult with age. The morning he left, something felt wrong. I couldn't name it. just a tightness in my chest, a sense of foreboding. He kissed me goodbye at dawn, like he'd done 10,000 times before. Be back tomorrow, he said, and love you. Love you too, be careful. I watched him ride away and the feeling didn't leave. I tried to shake it off. Went about my day, checked close trap lines, tended garden, prepared dinner, but the feeling stayed. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch and watched the stars and tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. The next day he didn't return. By evening I knew, the way you know things in your bones, something terrible had happened. I rode for Robin's cabin, arriving after dark. He saw my face and knew. Flint didn't come back, I said. We left at first light. Rob and Ezra, my son, who'd ridden through the night when Robin sent word and me. We rode hard for Beaver Meadows. We found him on the trail 3 miles below the high meadow. The grizzly had caught him coming around a blind corner. A big boar, probably on a kill, defending his food. Flint never had a chance to reach his rifle. The bear was gone. The body remained. I knelt in the dirt beside my husband of 35 years, and I felt something inside me go very quiet and very cold. His face was peaceful. Whatever had happened, it had been fast. That was small mercy. We wrapped him in canvas and brought him home. The funeral was 4 days later. Half the territory came. Flint had helped so many people over the years, taught young trappers, rescued lost miners, stood with neighbors against trouble. They buried him on the hill overlooking Thornwood Station with a view of the 3 peaks I'd named Faith, Hope, and Charity 40 years before. I stood beside the grave and I still couldn't cry. The grief was too big for tears. It sat in my chest like a stone. After everyone left, I sat beside his grave alone. You gave me 35 years, I said to the dirt. 35 years of partnership, of love, of building something real. Some people don't get 35 minutes. I'm grateful for every day. But God, Flint, I miss you already. Miss you so much, I can't breathe around it. The wind sighed through the pines. Somewhere a raven called. The mountain went on being the mountain, indifferent to human grief. Ezra, my son, approached quietly, sat down beside me. Ma, you shouldn't stay out here alone. Come live with me and Elizabeth. Or with Sarah in Denver. You don't have to keep running Thornwood by yourself. Yes, I do. Why, you've proven everything you needed to prove. I looked at him, this man who had Flint's eyes and my stubbornness. Because Flint's death doesn't erase my capability. I can still work these trap lines. I can still survive here. And as long as I can, I will. This is my home. I'll leave when I'm ready, not before. You're as stubborn as the mountain itself. Thank you. I ran Thornwood Station for 45 more years after Flint died. Alone. Not lonely because loneliness is wanting company you can't have, but alone. The first year was hardest. I'd wake in the night reaching for him. Set 2 plates at dinner before remembering. See his coat hanging by the door and forget for a moment why it was still there. But I kept working, kept living, because that's what Flint would have wanted, what Ezra Thornwood would have wanted. The second year I taught young men the skills I'd learned, became known as the old woman who could out-trap anyone in the territory. The 5th year, Sarah visited with her first child. Ma, come to Denver. Live with us. You're 66 years old. You've done enough. Not yet. The 10th year they put in a road. Cars started appearing. The world was changing around me, but Thornwood remained. The 20th year, 1943, the war took my grandson Daniel to Europe. He came home changed. Hollow, I understood. Some things mark you forever. The 30th year, my hands started shaking. Arthritis settling into joints that had worked too hard for too long. I stopped trapping but kept the station running. Hired young men to work the lines. Became the manager instead of the worker. The 40th year, I was 101 years old, the oldest person in the county. Newspapers wanted to interview me. I refused. What was there to say I'd survived? That was all. But in 1968 December, when the cancer finally caught up with me, when I lay in that Denver hospital bed with Daniel, my grandson, beside me, about to go to Vietnam, I told the story. All of it. The convent, the letters, Ezra's death, claiming Thornwood, killing Kane Bridger, the solo winter, Pale Moon and Flint, the mountain lion, the birth, building something that lasted. 35 years with Flint, 45 years alone after. That's the story I told Daniel, my voice barely a whisper. That's what I wanted you to know. Not about winning, about choosing, about having the courage to pick the hard road and walk it all the way to the end. Daniel was crying. Grandma, you were so brave. I was terrified every single day. But bravery isn't absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. Choosing courage over comfort. Choosing life over safety. What about Grandpa Flint and you after all those years alone? Flint gave me 35 years of partnership, the best years of my life. And when he died, I kept living. Not because I didn't love him, because I did. Because the best way to honor what we built was to keep building. His death didn't erase my strength. It tested it, and I was strong enough to survive it. I reached for the rosary on my bedside table, the one Mother Superior had given me 82 years ago in Boston. The beads were worn smooth from decades of handling. Take this to Vietnam, I said, pressing it into Daniel's hands. Not because you have to pray it, but because it's a reminder. You come from a line of people who chose courage over fear. That's your blood, Daniel. Use it. He clutched the rosary. I'm scared, Grandma. Good. Fear is information. It tells you what matters. But don't let it make your choices. Go to Vietnam if you must. Do your duty. But come home. Come home and build something. That's what we do. We survive. We build. We leave the world better than we found it. That night alone in my hospital room, I looked out the window toward the mountains I could barely see in the darkness. Somewhere out there was Thornwood Station. My home. My legacy. I thought about Mother Superior dying full of regrets. I thought about Ezra Thornwood, who'd built a dream for a woman he'd never met. I thought about Flint, who'd loved me enough to let me be myself. I thought about all the choices I'd made, all the hard roads I'd walked. No regrets, not one. I increased the morphine drip myself, taking control of my death the way I'd taken control of my life. The pain eased, my breathing slowed. My last thought was this: I traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger and found a grave. But in that grave's shadow, I discovered something more precious than any marriage could have given me. Myself, my strength, my capability, my choice. I claimed 640 acres when law said women couldn't. I trapped beaver when culture said women shouldn't. I killed to defend what was mine. I survived winters alone. I married for love, not need. And when my husband died, I kept going. Because my strength was never borrowed. It was always mine. That's the truth of the frontier. It doesn't just test who you are, it reveals who you can become. And I became everything I was afraid to dream. My eyes closed, my breathing stopped, and Grace Blackwell, Thornwood Ash, 86 years old, died as she'd lived, on her own terms, unafraid, free. They buried me on a cold December day in 1968 next to Flint on the hill above Thornwood. My children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to say goodbye. Daniel, wearing his army uniform, read from a letter I'd left for him. I am not afraid of death. I've faced it too many times to fear it now. I'm only afraid of dying with words unspoken and deeds undone. But I've spoken my words. I've done my deeds. I've lived fully and loved deeply and built something that will outlast me. That's all anyone can ask for. That's enough. The Historical Society made Thornwood Station a protected site in 1970. The cabins still stand. The trap shed still holds Ezra's original traps. The cache still rises 12 feet above the ground. And on the hill above, two graves rest side by side facing the mountains. Tourists come sometimes. They take pictures and read plaques that tell my story. Most don't understand, can't understand. But for those who listen, for those who stand quiet on that hill and let the wind carry the truth, they can still feel it. The courage it took, the choices made, the price paid, the legacy built, the mountain remembers. And when the wind blows through the pines, if you listen carefully, you might hear a voice. Not a ghost, just an echo, a reminder. Choose courage, choose life, choose the hard road, and build something that lasts.